Welcome to R&R Living Life. In this, our second last episode for this adventure, we leave Dead Horse Yards at Frankfield and make our way through Clermont, Emerald, Capella, Comet and Blackwater to make camp just outside of Rolleston. Much of the grazing land that surrounds us here has been scattered brigalow or gidgee, an acacia which regrows as suckers, if not cleanly ripped from the ground. Post-war mechanised clearing, the burning of windrows and sowing the downs country with exotic pasture cleared the brigalow and enabled intensified cattle grazing. However, large swathes of cereal growing has increased in the area. We were leaving behind the road dubbed the Horror Highway and were now on smoother bitumen. However, the road edges still were rather dangerous. About 30 kilometres from Clermont, we came to a section of road under reconstruction at Myclare Creek. Initially to replace the existing Myclare wooden bridge, efforts are now being made to improve flood immunity and widening of the road. As we neared Clermont, we began to see the unique steep volcanic peaks within the Peak Range, a range of volcanic plugs between Clermont, Moranbah and Dysart, rising from the plains. Key peaks include the 572-metre Wolfgang Peak, twin Gemini Mountains and flat-top Lord's Table Mountain. I was surprised by the length, 13 kilometres, of the overland conveyor belt from the Clermont mine that transport coal to stockpile and rail loading facilities at the nearby Blair Athol mine to be transshipped to coastal ports. Clermont's open cut is a truck and shovel operation, with the site's major seam known as the Wolfgang seam. We bypassed Clermont, the first inland European settlement in Queensland, and continued on to Emerald. We were now entering the Central Highlands, a region in the Capricorn region, a major productive agricultural area known for its fertile black soils, predominantly cracking clay soils, and mining, while on the horizon were the sharp peaks of the Peak Range, clearly visible across the Broadacre farms. The Peak Range was built up by an extensive sequence of basalt flows that erupted from a volcano between 32 and 29 million years ago. We were seeing a vibrant, stunning mix of natural volcanic scenery and productive, vivid green crops. We arrived in Capella, with little more than a pub, post office, motel and cafe, midway between Clermont and Emerald, renowned for its productive fertile soils and spectacular scenery, with a rich agricultural and pastoral history. The Gregory Highway is also known as Peak Down Street, as it passes through Capella from north to south, and is Capella's main street. Immediately north of the town we had crossed Capella Creek, a tributary of the Nagoa River. Capella is a service town catering to the large coal mining interests in the area, as well as pastoralists and farmers. Explorer Ludwig Leichhardt came through the area in the mid-19th century, and his positive feedback encouraged the arrival of graziers and the establishment of several pastoral stations. Things really started to take off, though, when a railway line opened between Emerald and Clermont in 1882, passing through Capella on its way. The town received a big boost in the 1950s when Queensland British Food Corporation began grain production here, and despite the fact the initiative ultimately failed, it did lead to the introduction of new crops such as sorghum and sunflowers. Another economic lift was delivered when coal was discovered at nearby Thierry, and a large open-cut mine was developed there in 1982. Like many small rural towns, Capella has had its economic ups and downs, but it has remained a welcoming country town. We were heading south to Emerald through a blend of arid and lush terrains, making for a diverse landscape. Rick was familiar with Emerald, so continued on through the town and stopped in under the Nagoa River Bridge at the Botanic Gardens. Emerald used to be a major sunflower producer, which explains why the town is home to the world's largest Van Gogh sunflower painting, measuring 25 metres high, found on an easel in Moreton Park at the western end of Clermont Street. We passed the restored National Trust listed railway station built in 1900, featuring wrought iron lacework and pillared portico. I find this type of wrought iron fascinating. Parking up on the banks of the Nagoa River, we strolled through the Botanic Gardens, a tropical oasis, although we did not wander the whole 42 acres that includes a rose garden, maze, bush chapel and sculptures. Established in 1987, the gardens are home to 12 different themed plant communities, most representing plant species that are native to the region. After a relaxing stop, we continued on the Capricorn Highway. The Nagoa River rises on the Carnarvon Range and generally flows in a northeasterly direction towards Emerald. North of Comet, the river forms the confluence with the Comet River, forming the Mackenzie River. The Nagoa catchment covers an area of over 27,000 square kilometres, and along its length there are over 270 kilometres of riverine wetlands. On leaving Emerald, we pass what was the Emerald Agricultural College, now redeveloped as the Central Queensland Smart Cropping Centre, and Agro, a major annual 3-day agricultural and mining trade show, focusing on machinery, technology and livestock. Recent rains in the area had left table drains filled with water. About 25 kilometres east of Emerald, we passed the purpose-built 240-hectare Central Queensland inland port at Yamala, consisting of an intermodal freight facility with direct access to the Capricorn Highway and the main Western Railway line. The intermodal facility was designed to handle and transfer freight from one transport mode to another. Within the park are GrainCorp bulk grain handling, intermodal and container terminals, a rail siding, and an industrial park for major industrial activities. We pass the Comet River that rises on the western slopes of Expedition Range and flows in a northerly direction towards Rolleston. About 40 kilometres from Emerald, Rick and I pulled up at McDonald Park in Comet, and I tried to remember if I had ever been through here, but couldn't remember. Imagine coming into a town where buildings were made from sheets of bark or slab timber. From looking at a map of Cometville in 1878, bark huts were quite numerous along the streets, though some buildings were made from corrugated iron. An occasional dressed timber structure added to the atmosphere of the frontier town. The sturdier structures would have been dismantled in the last town and brought forward on the ever-progressing railway line to the west. The railway workers pitched their canvas tents on any suitable piece of ground they found around the town. What an interesting little town it turned out to be. Comet was established in association with the westward development of the railway line from Rockhampton and named after the Comet River, which runs close to the township. It was named by German explorer and naturalist Ludwig Gleichart after observing Halley's Comet in the western skies during his visit through the Central Highlands in late 1844. In Whistlestop Park, just off the Capricorn Highway, we viewed a dig tree, a marked area of a tree housed in a purpose-built display. The original Coolabah tree was felled in the 1950s, fearing it would be lost to fire, and the marked portion was sent to Brisbane for safekeeping until its return to Comet in March 1997, after being on display in Miles and Rockhampton. Opposite the shelter was an old Comet railway station opened in 1878, housing displays of local memorabilia, including old photographs and vintage railway bridge plans. 2 large wool receiving stores were in the large railway yard at its time, and Cometville had up to 100 bullocks and horse teams carting wool to be trucked out by rail. The short railway line, though, was of little use to western businesses and graziers, so the line was extended to Longreach. Rick and I flicked through the books in the Comet Free Library located in a bright red cupboard that sits in the park. There are 16 historical sites on the Comet tails and walking trails to explore, all except 2 that are within the block bordered by the highway. The rich black alluvial soils of the Comet and Mackenzie River floodplain support the town's prosperous grazing and agricultural industries, producing crops of cotton, sorghum, maize, soybeans and sunflowers. We passed Minion Mountain, created to encourage travellers to stop and check out the Minions. A local miner came up with the idea to encourage drivers to take a break while travelling this stretch of the Capricorn Highway. After a rough start with his first minion being acquired by, let's say, a traveller, however, thankfully minion number 1 was found 3 days later and returned to its post. After people's response to the first minion looking lonely, Mr. Macpherson made another one and then kept going. Now there is a family of minions on top of the rise, all made from gas bottles, a fuel tank, and one crafted from an old hot water system, with eyes created from steel pipes and dog food tins. We stopped in Blackwater for lunch. Nestled between the Expedition and Carnarvon Ranges, Blackwater is known as the coal capital of Queensland, within a significant coal mining area with a strike length of 80 kilometres. The town's name was inspired by the dark colour of the local waterhole. 9 major open-cut coal mines and 1 underground dot the landscape surrounding the town, with mining undertaken using a conventional multi-seam dragline strip methodology. 7 draglines are employed in multiple concurrent pits along strike, in conjunction with a large fleet of trucks, electric rope shovels, hydraulic excavators and dozers. Coal was discovered by Ludwig Leichhardt on his expedition from Moreton Bay to Port Essington, now Darwin, in 1845. It wasn't until over a century after Leichhardt first discovered the beds of coal in Blackwater that the town saw major coal mining development. I was impressed by the 37 flags displayed along the Capricorn Highway at Lyons Park that represent the different nationalities that work side by side to establish the district's coal industry. The grand water tower dominates the park, and historic features include a restored engine of a 1953 C-class locomotive train and an old railway station that was built in 1877. Bonnie Doon is a neighbourhood in the centre of the locality, associated with the Bonnie Doon Pastoral Station, established in 1893. A 16.5 kilometre long pipeline connects the Northern Coal Processing Plant to Bonnie Doon. With the opening up of several coal mines near the town in the 1960s, Blackwater's population rapidly increased as people searching for work found employment in the town's booming mining industry. From Blackwater we made our way towards Rolleston along the edge of the Blackdown tablelands. What an amazing sight! Through Stewarton, a rural locality with a rich pastoral heritage. The fully sealed Blackwater-Rolleston Road has long served as a transit route for graziers and freight, but it is not the smoothest road to travel on. The area is frequently described as the Comet Blackwater-Rolleston Triangle, a grazing district known for its prime cattle breeding, backgrounding and finishing country, premier bufflegrass country. The land often features developed brigalow and softwood scrubs, sown with bufflegrass, green panic, rhodes and bluegrass, along with areas of black soil downs and open mountain coolabahs. Water security in the region features artesian bores, dams, turkeys' nests, and in some cases spring-fed water systems. Rising abruptly above the surrounding dry plains, the sandstone plateau of the Blackdown tableland began between 265 and 210 million years ago as a basin, part of the larger Bowen Basin, bordered by volcanic mountains, where river sediments and marine mud accumulated. Then, during the Jurassic period between 240 and 335 million years ago, freshwater streams deposited thick layers of quartz sand, which were later compressed by geological forces and hardened into the resistant reddish-brown sandstone that makes up the clematis group, forming the top layer of the tableland. Geological forces in the east force these beds upwards, causing the tableland to rise. It sits at the junction of the Shotover, Expedition and Dawson ranges, with some sections showing evidence of folding exposed in the rises and depressions amongst the ranges. While the surrounding softer mudstone and cold-filled plains weathered away, the harder sandstone cap resisted erosion. This created the abrupt, steep escarpments and plateaus seen today. The 900-metre high sandstone plateau in central Queensland acts as an elevated island in the sky because its rugged, hard sandstone layers have resisted the erosion that wore away the surrounding landscape. Because it is higher and cooler than the surrounding plains, it hosts unique vegetation, including heathlands and moist pockets of ferns. Its isolation means plants and animals that are found nowhere else thrive here. These include the black down stringy bark, a macrozamia, red bottlebrush, the black down monster, a type of underground cricket, and a Christmas beetle. Blackdown Tableland National Park, which we hope to visit on another of our adventures, was settled as a grazing homestead and perpetual lease property in 1869 by William Yeldwin, who gave the tableland its name after his family home, Blackdown House. Growing up, I had always heard that this area was prime cattle grazing country, and it was easy to see why. The improved pastures, servicing major high-quality herds, including EU-accredited producers and breeding studs, was impressive. Rick and I camped at the turn-off to Comet at 20 Mile Grid Reserve, a nice quiet gravel pit, with the only visitors a school bus dropping off and collecting students, bringing back memories of the good old days when I travelled to school by bus. The following morning we made our way into Rolleston, located on the Comet River. Rolleston is at the junction of the Carnarvon and Dawson highways. Rick and I will leave you here as we fill up with water before continuing on the Dawson Highway, a nightmare piece of road to Bohenia and Mara. Give us a thumbs up if you have enjoyed this episode. Join us next time for our last episode of this journey. Cheers for now. Cherish every moment. Rick and Rosemary. R&R, living life.